U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is back in the hot seat with the same Senate committee that helped confirm her as the nation's top law enforcement officer just 8 months ago. Since then, she has found herself in the middle of near constant controversies, which several senators are drilling down in. Here's some of what we've heard so far.
They are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump.
Having you respond with completely irrelevant far-right internet talking points really is not very helpful here.
Let's continue our coverage with White House correspondent Von Hilliard, MSNBC's Ali Vitale, just outside the hearing room, and also with us former federal prosecutor Brendan Ballou. He worked in the DOJ's National Security Division, and former Manhattan Assistant DA Catherine Christian is still with us. Ali, the tone of this hearing has been striking, and just what the two different parties are asking about is also striking. What are your top takeaways?
It's the things that each party are asking, which is not necessarily surprising, given the way that we expected Democrats to tee off on a number of issues, Republicans to tee off on a number of issues. But I think it is Bondi's tone in responding to Democrats versus how she's speaking to Republicans that has stood out to me the most, and frankly, is a pattern that we've seen across top members of the Trump administration as they come to testify before this and other committees. For example, RFK Jr., the HHS secretary, anytime anyone was contrarian with him or pressed him on issues, he was combative. The same can be said of the FBI director Kash Patel when he was testifying in front of this very committee, lashing out at Democrats, including someone that we'll see a little bit later during this hearing, Adam Schiff, for questions that he deemed inappropriate or that he didn't like. I think it's a reminder of the way that for many of these cabinet officials, they are still very much aware of the old adage that we've all covered in the Trump administration of you are performing for an audience of one, and the audience of one is the president, who likes to see his top emissaries from various cabinets defend his administration's policies, show no weakness, and just continue to go at anyone who is seemingly the opposition, despite the fact that Congress's job is to do oversight exactly like they are doing. One of those examples of that is the way that the top Democrat on this committee, Dick Durbin, asked her about the Epstein files. Just take a look at that exchange.
Why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
If you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk.
Who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. And you won't do it today, but eventually you will.
Far from the only moment that she was asked about Epstein, Anna, but they've also touched on other topics like sending federal troops to Chicago, as well as immigration efforts that the DOJ and FBI have been involved in over the course of these last several months.
Yeah, a lot of deflection, not a lot of substantive answers so far to some of those tough questions that we're hearing in particular from Democrats, although she did, I guess, make one newsy moment with the information she provided about some of the DOJ's top officials heading to Chicago. And now, since then, the FBI director, Kash Patel, says he's on his way to the Windy City in a social media post within the last hour. Catherine, you've been listening all along with us. What stands out most to you from this hearing?
I was just writing you a note. What stood out for me was Senator Klobuchar, who was a career prosecutor before she became a senator, reading President Trump's social media posts where he uses the AG's name. We can't delay any longer, Pam. Basically prosecute Schiff, Attorney General James, and James Comey. This would have been an opportunity for the Attorney General to say, Department of Justice prosecutes without fear or favor. Instead, she said he, meaning President Trump, didn't say anything he hasn't for years. So she had an opportunity then to make it clear, okay, he posted that, but I'm telling you, that's not how I run this agency.
And she didn't create that separation. She just went on to praise President Trump, calling him the most transparent president. Yes. Brendan, you signed this letter with nearly 300 other former career DOJ employees imploring more congressional oversight and expressing concern about how the DOJ is being run right now and public perception. When it comes to oversight, is this and what we're seeing today what you had in mind?
In part, yes. I am pleased that the Democrats are focused on really the corruption of this administration, which I think is the administration's Achilles heel. The fact that Senator Klobuchar was talking about, the apparently corrupt HP Juniper merger agreement in the antitrust division, the fact that Senator Whitehouse was talking about Tom Homan and Ghislaine Maxwell and so forth, I think are all good signs. And I think that they're things that's very hard for the administration to evade on substance, which is why I think you're seeing a lot of yelling. I will say, we signed that letter, or at least I should say I signed that letter, not with the intention of trying to get this administration to change. Like AG Bondi, the president, have their agenda. They're not going to, deviate from that. But what I want to explain is that, for juries, for judges, for bar committees, it's important to understand that AG Bondi has changed the Department of Justice.
Reporting you broke related to an investigation of an alleged bribery scheme that involved Tom Homan prior to joining this Trump administration. Remind us of what you uncovered and what did you make of her answers?
Yeah, I found it fascinating. Here's what the reporting showed, and thanks for asking. It basically revealed that in 2024, the FBI kept hearing from basically a target of an investigation, a subject of an investigation, that he knew Tom Homan very well, and Tom Homan could get these agents who were posing undercover as business officials. He could get these businesses federal contracts in the new Trump administration in exchange for a lot of cash. They began investigating Homan, and in an undercover sting, they arranged to make basically a meeting where they'd strike this deal for future contracts. And Tom and Homan walked away with $50,000 in cash in a paper bag. And what was shocking about this was he was about to be named the border czar by Donald Trump. He eventually was after Trump's election. And when Trump appointees got into the Department of Justice and the FBI, the probe stalled, and Kash Patel actually got a briefing and decided it should all be shut down. What, again, is amazing is it's really unusual to have a case in which someone accepts a bag of cash in an undercover sting and that probe doesn't continue. Under Donald Trump's DOJ, it was put on ice and then completely shuttered.
That's right. And Senator Whitehouse asked, what happened to that $50,000? Did Tom Homan keep it? Did he put it on his tax filing? All questions that he says he wants answers to. He didn't get them in this hearing right now. Let me remind everybody that the list of DOJ controversies under Bondi has begun to stack up, and we are hearing questions about a number of them, from the top-down pressure from Trump about who to investigate. Of course, there's the entire Epstein saga. There have been mass layoffs rippling through the DOJ. There's been the takeover of D.C. law enforcement and threats to go into other cities, potential Hatch Act violations, again, the Homan investigation. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Catherine, as you've been listening, one, what stands out and what are you hoping is still asked?
I just also want to clarify about that $50,000. That's government money. This was an undercover operation.
Good point.
Meaning the government provided it to Mr. Homan.
She should have those answers,
so
right?
One would hope that once he became part of the government, that he gave it back. But I just wanted to clarify that. This was not private money. This was the government money. So what I'm hoping for it, which is we're probably not going to get because these aren't really hearings. It's the AG has her points, the senators have their points. But we are getting information that there were 100 SARS, suspicious activity reports, such as, all banks, all financial institutions are required by law, the Department of Treasury, when they have a customer and they suspect that there's some suspicious activity, money laundering, elder fraud, or some financial fraud, they have to file that with the government. And what's supposed to happen is FBI, DEA, whatever, they investigate whether or not there actually is a crime. So that was a good question.
And that was on the Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, so what
case.
happened? Did anyone, because these SARs were long before, obviously, he was prosecuted. Whatever happened to them? What's in those suspicious activity reports? What did these banks, these financial institutions detect that he was doing? In terms of, just so for when they're talking about Emil, now the Honorable Emil Beauvais, the OPR, the Office of Professional Responsibility, that's the arm of DOJ, that investigates whenever there are allegations of ethical misconduct against prosecutors. Now, the Attorney General said that litigation is still pending, but he is now sitting and has a lifetime appointment.
And again, remind us what the allegations were.
You know, there were several, from him directing his subordinates not to follow court orders, which is an ethical violation, not just for prosecutors, of all attorneys. And again, he's now has a lifetime appointment as a judge. There were also allegations from when he was an AUSA in the Southern District, Assistant United States Attorney. So according to the AG, that's still pending. But he's now has a lifetime appointment.
And so her answer was she's not going to discuss personnel matters. That's how she sort of got around answering direct questions about that. Michael, you were one of nearly 300 ex-DOJ employees who signed a letter just before this hearing to, quote, sound the alarm. And your letter reads in part, the Justice Department cannot uphold the rule of law.
I bet you're wondering the same thing I am. What do you all think? That Pam Bondi, is in deep trouble with Donald. He saw that, or at least got the gist of it. And he's not happy. Not happy at all, because Pam Bondi absolutely screwed him there with straight-up incompetence. Yes, but I think, and maybe this was unintentional, maybe it was intentional, the room just got too hot. And she bolted for the exit. You know, like Donald's buried in there, couldn't get out before the building burns down. Like she's scrambling for the door, yelling back, Donald, you're on your own. Because those questions, they don't just make her look bad. I don't know if there's criminal liability that could one day get exposed by this. And remember, even if Donald Trump is effectively above the law, even if he can't really go to prison for what he does as president, thanks to those Supreme Court rulings from recent years that basically say a president can do almost anything in their official job, and face no criminal consequences unless they're impeached and convicted and all that jazz, right, we covered that. That shield, it doesn't apply to the cronies? The cronies are very much still within the law, and sure, Trump can pardon them, but what if he's mad at you? What if he just doesn't? What if he forgets? And then he's not president anymore, and the next Republican, they might not even care enough about you to make the move. I think this is a sign, the big sign, that the MAGA world is crumbling. Pam Bondi, I don't think she's dumb, I really don't. She's not the brightest attorney general in American history, but she's no unintelligent woman. So what you saw there, that was her struggling. It's hard to answer these questions when you know you're wrong, when you know you're on the wrong side of history, but also her scrambling to make sure Donald's scandals don't come crashing down right on her head. As he just calls her the girl who got me coffee, forgets who she is seconds after she quits, or worse, God forbid for her, she gets indicted. One way or another, she's out, and she's starting to see the flames closing in.